Hey guys, welcome to chapter 13. Today we're going to be talking about the influences of modern art. This chapter, when we talk about the influences of modern art, we're going to be moving further into the 20th century. So as we move into the 20th century, we start to see things like the invention of cars, airplanes, motion pictures, like we looked at last class, and even wireless radio transmissions. All these things started to pave a way for a new wave of communication. Because we are talking about visual communication in this class, all these different new means of communication really created new art styles because people were trying to create things differently in a visual manner. So there's a lot of different art styles that are happening during modern art in the beginning of the 20th century. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a style called Cubism. Now there are two kinds of Cubism, and we'll talk about both of those. Right now we're going to talk about a style called Analytical Cubism. So when Cubism was introduced, it was a way of challenging the Renaissance style. The Renaissance style was very refined, like we've looked at very much in the Rococo era with those S curves and C curves. The Cubist style was a complete revolt against that. Now, the movement was started by a man of the name of Pablo Picasso. Probably heard of him. His last name is Picasso. It's Picasso, Pablo Picasso. And so, as Pablo Picasso began his work, he defined his style as a style that replaced the rendering of appearances with the endless possibility of invented form. This style was called analytical cubism. So what that means is that he's not just drawing appearances of what something looks like, he's drawing the possibilities of what it could look like. An easier way of describing this is to look at these images here and see that a lot of times in Picasso's work, you'll see that he paints on geometric planes. What this means is that he wouldn't paint a subject sitting in front of him, he would paint all the possibilities of that subject sitting in front of him. So it looks like in a lot of Cubist paintings that they're done from a whole bunch of different angles and then smashed together into one painting. They were often very, very abstract, but they very often were a portrait of a subject done from a bunch of different angles, all put onto one single canvas so that it looked like this abstract, kind of confusing look of a portrait of a subject. Picasso worked very, very closely with a man by the name of Georges Braque, B-R-A-Q-U-E. It's B-R-A-Q-U-E, Braque. And he was also a master of this analytical cubism style and created some absolutely amazing work. So out of cubism, as the style progressed along, they started to branch off from analytical cubism and started a new style called synthetic cubism. Synthetic cubism started around 1912 when Picasso and Braque started to introduce paper collage elements into the work of cubism. These paper collage elements were now used to represent objects, thoughts, ideas, or textures. They'd often use letter forms or even clippings from newspapers. In this piece here, you can see that it's three musicians that are depicted playing music. And you know that it's music because the paper is music sheets that has been cut out. So they would start to use the actual forms that they would be working with and the materials they'd be working with to deepen that level of cubism to show what the possibilities could be in this scene. This style was much more representative and much more metaphoric and kind of abstract than analytical cubism, where you could kind of see a subject. This piece here is called The Three Musicians and is a perfect example of the style. There's another man that worked in the same style, working with Picasso and with Braque, by the name of Ferdinand Leger, L-E-G-E-R, L-E-G-E-R, and he worked with the Cubist movement, but he moved away from the style of Picasso. He wasn't concerned about creating forms of people or forms of scenes. He wanted to create new and improved letter forms. So Ferdinand Leger started working in this Cubist style, but changed it over to working with letter forms. He'd use a lot of bold geometric shapes and colors that related to each other. So his work wasn't focused on each individual piece, it was focused on how each individual piece related to the pieces around it. He would often show little bits and fragments of reality and information to try to get the viewer to piece it together for themselves. He was the founder of some of the geometric letter forms that we see and use today. That you can see on this, to where the line height, or the line width goes all the way down to 0. That these letters are made much more geometrically and much more simply, and much more abstractly than people were used to seeing at the time. On the left here is a scene depicting the angel on the Cathedral of Notre Dame blowing her trumpet, and on the right is the mayhem illustrating the falling of names. So this is really a portrait of the end of the world. Things you'll need to know about Ledger, especially for a visual identification, is that Ledger's style consisted almost exclusively of flat planes of color, urban motifs, and hard-edged precision. His work was very, very precise, very geometric, and always used bright, bright, bright colors. This would really set the look for modern design after World War I. He was really ahead of his time and set a style that people then wanted to replicate further on in history. This is a piece that he created representing the fall of man, and it's illustrated by a pinwheel kind of spinning around down a hole, spelling accelerated slow motion cinema. So he's talking about the fall of man by using this kind of avant-garde, new, very metaphoric and abstract means. Cubism, you'll need to know this for your quiz. Cubism took a new approach to visual composition. It was no longer about a certain set of rules that you had to follow. It gave permission for designers to openly explore what they could do. Much like we looked at Ver Sacrum, it was a place where designers could explore the possibilities to see what they could do, but it wasn't very popular. Now this Cubist style was starting to get popular, and it opened up full exploration for designers. It let them use geometric abstraction and really set a style for the later years and later styles that were to come after it. So the next style that we're going to move into after Cubism is a style called Futurism. Futurism is a bit out there. Futurism is kind of what you get when you take all the graphic design movements that have happened and smash them all together to kind of create this weird Frankenstein of a style. So Futurism was started and launched by an Italian poet by the name of Filippo Marinetti. And his last name is Marinetti. 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 Mr. Filippo Marinetti. And he published a manifesto of futurism in Paris. You'll need to know that for your quiz. And the style was established as a place for artists to test their ideas and kind of forms against the new realities of scientific and industrial society. He wanted to create something that was a revolt against the kind of stuck-up progress of the world, and something to where the artists could really exist in their own space in kind of this imaginary world. His manifesto said this: we will destroy museums, destroy libraries, and fight against moralism, feminism, and all utilitarian cowardice. So he was really against a lot of things, fighting for a place to create something new for designers. His poetry defied the rules of basic syntax and structure. He is kind of the inventor and pioneer of a new style called Words in Freedom that you'll need to know for your quiz. And this style disregarded the design of a page and focused on the letter sounds. He wanted the sound to have a voice, to say something to you. Instead of just reading what it said, he wanted it to have a certain tone to it. And often over 12 to 15 fonts would be used on a page in bold, non-bold, italic, to use emphasis and kind of create a whole scene around instead of just trying to get you to come to something and grab your attention. You can see here on the right, it's all about the look of the letters on the page, not necessarily what they were saying. So Marinetti made this kind of observation to explain his work. He said that when a man sees an explosion, he doesn't have time to lay it out nicely and convey the ideas. He simply shrieks and yells and hurls all the words he can out at once and runs. So it's basically if someone tossed a grenade into the room that you're in right now, and they're like, design a piece about this grenade that is in the room with you. You wouldn't take time to sit there and design out a nice piece and do an illustration of a grenade with a chair and you're sitting in the background and nice lighting and shading. You would throw whatever you could on a page and then run out of the room. So futurism is very much about that. It's about living in the moment and less about conveying a message and more about conveying a feeling through the type. So futurist poets would fight against geometric layout. Again, it's all about just putting stuff wherever you want on the page. So they wouldn't stick to the typographic book to where it would be justified in a left to right kind of scheme. They kind of revolted against what was happening with the Gutenberg press and would design their pages with dynamic and non-linear compositions. As you see here on the right, Lewis Carroll was a big fan of this style, and this is a poem by Lewis Carroll called A Mouse Tale. And you can see that it's talking about a tail and kind of the play on words, but it was arranged in the shape of a tail, so that it's less about the story and more about how the story looks on the page. Something else that futurism did is there were 5 other futurists that in 1910 joined Filippo Marinetti and started the Manifesto of the Futurist Painters. So futurism extended out of design and print design and into painting. And they said this: we want to destroy the cult of the past, totally invalidate all kinds of imitation, elevate all attempts at originality, and sweep the whole entire field of art clean from all themes and subjects that have been used in the past, and support and glorify our day to the day of the world. So basically, they wanted to get rid of everything that had ever existed because they were going to create a new art form that was so much better than anything that had ever existed, that all the stuff, all the things we've learned so far in this class, they thought were completely irrelevant, and it was time to completely wipe the slate clean. The futurist painters were very much influenced by Cubism, but instead of showing different angles like we looked at in analytical Cubism, they wanted to show moments in time. So instead of showing a portrait of a person from a whole bunch of different angles that was abstract and in that Cubist style, they would do a painting like this, where they would show 6 or 7 frames of something, all painted on the same canvas to show the movement that was happening in the piece and at the time. So the next style that we're going to talk about is a style called Dada, which is probably one of my favorite styles. Dada is what happens when you take futurism and take out even more rules, and probably toss in some kind of crazy people who kind of want to just do their own thing. So the Dada movement was started, and it claimed to not be a design movement. It claimed to be an anti-art movement. Dada was all about negativity. It was very, very negative and wanted to destroy certain styles and elements that people were using. Dada holds these 3 values true to its heart that you'll need to know for your quiz. Dada's 3 biggest goals were shock, protest, and nonsense. It was a style that was made to be negative, but really embrace the insanity of what a designer can do. They rejected all different traditions that were happening and sought complete creative freedom. So Dada was started by a man by the name of Tristan Tzara. 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 You'll need to know his name for your quiz. And he was an editor at a magazine that he started called Dada. It's such a complex and crazy style and movement that the actual name Dada, we don't know where it came from. It's said that at some point Tristan Tzara opened up a dictionary, stuck a knife into it, and it came up on the word Dada, and so he decided that's what to name it. But no one really knows the actual origins because it was such a chaotic and crazy movement that happened. So Dada is an exploration of sound poetry. It's not about, again, like futurism, what it looks like. It's about what it sounds like. So instead of saying that this piece is beautiful and it's laid out nicely, they would convey and say, this piece is kats, and it's all about the sounds that you can make while reading something. So it's concerned with sound poetry, nonsense poetry, and something called chance poetry. So the best example of this, that we've already looked at her work, or the work once, was the work of Lewis Carroll. So Lewis Carroll wrote a poem called The Jabberwocky. And the Jabberwocky is written in the Dada style. It's not concerned about the message or necessarily using actual words, but it's concerned about making you feel something, an emotion or a movement through the sounds that are happening, even if you have to make up words. So I'm going to read that to you guys and try to pick out the words that don't actually exist. "'Twas brillig and slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wabe, all whimsy were the boargroves, and the mome wraths outgrabe. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch, beware the Jubjub bird and shun the frimless bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the max gnome phone he sought, so rested he by the tumtum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock, his eyes aflame, came whiffling through the tugly wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through, the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O frabjous day! Calhoun, Calhay! He chorted all in joy. 'Twas brillig and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy were the boargroves, and the mome wraths outgrabe. So, as you heard, probably 70 to 80% of that poem are not real words, but somehow you can still track the story and pick up the sounds of things, the emotions of things, because of this Dada style that is concerned more about what it sounds like than actually making sense. So, one of the most prolific artists that worked in the Dada style was Marcel Duchamp. D-U-C-H-A-M-P. His last name's there at the top, D-U-C-H-A-M-P. So Marcel Duchamp was absolutely insane. This guy was crazy, crazy, crazy. And he was the most well-known artist of the Dada style. He's most well-known, if you've ever been to Red Robin, he's most well-known for that portrait of the Mona Lisa with a mustache drawn on it. I've always said, if you ever go to Red Robin has one of the most comprehensive catalogs of graphic design history on their walls. Hopefully when you're done with this class, you can go there and pick out all the different styles as it walks through graphic design history. I don't know if Red Robin knows that, but they do a pretty darn good job. So the reason he drew a mustache on the Mona Lisa wasn't to attack the painting. He wasn't saying that it wasn't a great painting. He wasn't saying that kind of poking fun at it. He was trying to mock tradition, that at some point the Mona Lisa had become more important than other works of art. Sure, it's good, but he didn't understand why it was so prestigious, why it was kind of this untouchable thing. So he decided to create a portrait where he drew a mustache on it to kind of attack that tradition and that high art society that was snobby, that people didn't like at the time. Dada artists actually said that they weren't artists. They said that they were merely individuals that were mocking an insane society. So they were really negative and, again, a kind of revolt against society around them. Dada invented a style called photo montage that you'll see here and there even now. So the photo montage is a technique to where you use found images to create jarring juxtapositions and chance happenings among a composition. A lot of times you'll see these with eyes cut out and pasted on other eyes and a weird mouth pasted on a mouth. And it created these very distorted, kind of scary figures. Dada really let this happen, and it was because of the time that it was in. They were seeing images coming back from the wars of people that had been mutilated, that they'd never seen images that were this kind of graphic and horrific before. And this idea of photo montage kind of mirrors what they were seeing, of creating these horrible, kind of gory images that they were seeing in the wars without having to have that gore. But unfortunately, Dada, as it was much too insane, had to come to an end, and it ended by 1922. It kind of ceased to exist as a movement suddenly, but this movement helped strip away all the typographic rules and certain styles that people had been using to the design, and really did wipe the slate clean for designers to come. And with that clean slate, we move into a new style that started in 1924 called Surrealism. So Surrealism entered the scene in 1924 after the insanity of Dada, and Surrealism was not any less crazy than Dada. The most prolific artist that worked in the Surrealist style was probably weirder than anyone that worked in the Dada style, and his name was Salvador Dali. D-A-L-I. This is a picture of him here with his mustache and his pet ocelot. He was pretty crazy. And the goal of Surrealism was to be more real than the real world behind the real world. So that's on your quiz. To be more real than the real world behind the real world. So surrealism, a great example is Alice in Wonderland. That you're standing somewhere and suddenly, what if that tree over there actually has a door in it that I can go inside? And when I go inside, there's a whole nother world in there. And this whole nother world is like my world, but different than my world, and kind of this fantastical place. Surrealism is all about finding a kind of fantasy in the real world. It wasn't described necessarily as an aesthetic. It was described as a way of thinking and knowing and feeling. Salvador Dali said that it's just a way of life. Just as Dada had been negative and destructive, Surrealism really wanted to rebuild and restore a faith in man and spirit. Surrealism was all focused on a liberation of the human spirit. It really, really embraced fantasy and wanted to show that in a visual way. So the next style we're going to talk about is Expressionism. Expressionism is all about how you feel, getting in touch with your feelings. Expressionism has a tendency to depict subjective emotions and personal responses to subjects as opposed to the reality of objects. So instead of showing a pen, Expressionism would show a pen that somehow looked sad, that you would feel sorry for the pen. So Expressionism really broke into two different sections. You'll need to know this for your quiz. As it started out, there were two main groups. The Bridge were one group, and the Blue Riders were the other group. Both styles used kind of hard lines and bold colors. They'd use a lot of thick paint and kind of loose brushwork. And really a lot of texture to help capture an emotion and express a certain emotion. So these two styles were completely different. The Bridge would focus on transforming their subject matter until the subject matter showed their own feelings, so the artist's feelings. The Blue Riders would transform the subject matter so that it was able to convey its own feelings. So let's say that we have a cheeseburger. So if an expressionist was doing an expressionist piece painting on a cheeseburger, the Bridge was going to transform the subject matter so that it showed the artist's feelings. So maybe they would draw this cheeseburger so it looked super delicious, so that it was just far out of reach. So the perspective made it look like it was far away because you'd look at it and think, oh man, the artist here must have been really, really hungry. That they're trying to convey their own feelings. The other side, the Blue Riders, would transform the subject matter so that it was able to convey its feelings of its own. So maybe they would paint this cheeseburger, and the cheeseburger would be kind of small and hiding behind a packet of fries because it was scared that it was going to get eaten. So instead of conveying their own feelings, they would create a piece that showed feelings of its own. A lot of inspiration for this was actually taken from children. It was taken from a lot of children's art, a lot of unschool artists, and a lot of people that weren't in the art world started to practice expressionism because it wasn't about how the art looked, it was about expressing an emotion and conveying a certain emotion. A lot of these techniques continued on later and influenced other design movements that we're going to look at. Expressionism really had a certain attention to a couple things. The point, the line, the shape, and the texture of visual works. These really became anchors to all art and design that was happening past the Expressionists. Line, plane, shape, and texture were all different pieces that you could put together. Think of it as a pantry. You had line, shape, plane, and texture in your pantry, and you went in, and whatever you tossed in the pot created a new emotion, a new piece. So they kind of experimented what they could do with those different ingredients. So photography started to evolve and create its own style, and the resurgence of new exploration and rebellion had led to an influx of photography that aimed to fit art movements. It wasn't necessarily about capturing moments anymore, it was about creating art with photography. Francis Bruguiere, it's Bruguiere, 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 it's French, began experimenting with multiple exposures. He would play with light as a form of expression. So he was working in expressionism, trying to get you to feel a feeling, whether that's excitement or sad or melancholy or hungry or scared. He would kind of manipulate and use multiple exposures to create these pieces that were to make you feel something. So the concepts and images and methods of visual organization from Cubism, Futurism, Dada, Surrealism, and Expressionism have all paved the way for designs that we work on today. They explored this kind of no man's land of visual communication and took down a lot of barriers that would have had no place in modern design. Because of their breakthroughs, we have a lot more freedom in design to really experiment with what we want to do and to create the emotions and feelings and convey them in a visual manner. So that's been chapter 13. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys are having a great week. Bye.